So why are weird people weird? What are weird people? Who are they? These people are usually outcasts, and they are maybe a little bit unsettling or uncomfortable or different than the average person. I guess you could say they disrupt the natural flow that the best way I can describe it is an NPC and like the mundane world has. By that I mean regular mundane people. If someone says something strange, and then what is strange, of course, it's something that disrupts the dream, the pattern, the haze that they're in. Mundane people are almost in some kind of like a dope haze of mundaneness. And anything that disrupts this is usually unsettling and weird. And a weird person is usually a nervous system dominant person. And that is the main thing. That's really the answer to the whole question. And that is the answer to the video. But to elaborate on that, by nervous system, I mean the brain and, of course, the spine and the nerves. And each person is usually dominant in one or multiple parts of the body. For example, a strong person is dominant in the muscles, a strong, athletic, maybe hot-headed person, right? We'll know these people. Some people are dominant in the fat of their body. Some people are dominant with the bones. These people are earthly, they're stable. The people who are dominant with the fat is more water. Weird people are dominant in the brain and the nervous system. And of course, these people are the magicians of the world. Usually they are outcasted in society and families to a great disadvantage or peril of those families and societies, because these people bring a lot of creativity, a lot of innovation, a lot of amazing stuff. But of course, a lot of people don't like to access their nervous system because they have used their nervous system as a trash bin for essentially metabolic waste, for trauma and such. You can focus on certain parts of the body and be near people, and then they will subconsciously stimulate these areas of the body. Um, you could maybe use this inappropriately if you wanted to. That's not the point of the video. The point is that a person who's dominant in their nervous system will stimulate the nervous system of other people. And if mundane people who are polarized to the earth, meaning they are the opposite of the nervous system, that being the heavenly upper system, they use it, as I said, as a trash bin. It's all their energy is focused physically, so their mind, spiritual qualities, and creativity and such is just calcified and such. So being near a weird person is uncomfortable. It is unsettling, frightening almost, because it's new and different and weird. So these people are usually outcasted. The idea of like maybe I don't know, maybe like a witch trial or something like that. People who are thought of as like demonic, devil people or something like that, right? perhaps they were, I mean, of course, there's ideas of these people being, some other things, but maybe they were, nervous system dominant people. Of course, the shamans and such, as I said, magicians and shamans and witches and such, probably are these kinds of people. And I think they are very important because they are fun. I don't know. They bring fun to the world, I guess. Interesting, strange, weird things. Aren't weird things kind of interesting and kind of fun? Of course, as long as they're not immoral and bad and, poor taste and quality, these things can be very fun and interesting. So anyway, that's just something to think about. And one other thing is that illness, extreme trauma, illness, premature birth, various addictions and drug use, and a lot of like extreme things can make people overstimulated in the nervous system and can make them a nervous system dominant person. All these people can kind of be interested in that, in like, addiction and just all that kind of stuff. So these people usually suffer really bad health a lot of the time, which makes them, people understood them almost as cursed, and they would be afraid of them because, like, you don't want to become cursed. Because the mundane person is very physically robust and healthy, but the nervous system dominant person is not very healthy, not very robust. They're usually sick, weak physically. They can become crazy if, because these people can go through a lot of trauma, or they can grow from like the soil of trauma almost. Their fate is a difficult one a lot of the time. Tesla, for example, his physiognomy, how his body looks, is incredibly nervous system dominant to the point of excess. And unfortunately, he died an unfortunate death. And I guess you could say it's a lack of physicality, like a lack of earth and stability in his life. He's an extreme example, but he brought the systems, the electromagnetic systems that run the entire world. And we owe him and many other people who developed, electromagnetic technology, we owe him so much. Of course, electromagnetism is a interest, computers, all this stuff is an interest of these people because it is analogous to them. Anyway, it's about enough. Goodbye. Have a nice day. I think controlling your emotions and your thoughts, which are, you can think the kind of spirit, that's the spiritual side of life, right? While controlling your body, your actual actions, is the physical side of, I guess the body or your experience here. But you need to learn to control your emotions and your thoughts, essentially. Why? Because they have an effect on reality. You might think, well, how does it have an effect on reality? One interesting thing is desire. Now, desire causes, they say the idea of desire causes pain, or it's unfulfilled desires that cause pain because you want something and you can't get it. Now, if you want something, like, maybe I'm going home from work and I look at, there's like a fast food restaurant and I think, oh, maybe I could get some of that. There's like a bottle shop. It's like, oh, get some alcohol, something like that. Eventually, like a week later or 2 weeks later or something, I'll just magically find myself walking in. It just feels so natural, it's like, because the desire it's like a seed that's planted and it's sprouted into the actions of doing something. Now that's essentially, this idea of like the secret, form of wish magic, and I'm not talking about like actual control of electromagnetic power to levitate things or whatever, though admittedly you are using energy to technically do things, desire, heart energy, head energy, all these things, right? Point being is that if you desire something, it will either, number one, cause you pain because you can't satisfy it. Number two, force you to kind of do things to try to satisfy it. Or number three, you will end up satisfying it. So if you control your desire, you won't screw things up. I don't want to go to a fast food restaurant because it's expensive. I don't want to buy alcohol because, again, well, I guess it's expensive, right? And I might feel bad the next day or whatever. So I have to learn to control my desire. These are just small scale things, but maybe you have, dark desires, right? You have inappropriate things like anger against people, or inappropriate love or something. Who knows? Maybe some people, they want to try to basically steal things or hurt people, or all kinds of things, right? So if you can control normal desires, and you can control dark desires, essentially, and dark desires can be from traumas a lot of the time, issues in the body, in the mind, and the heart, and the personality, etc. They're rooted from usually bad things, right? And you have to kind of get rid of them. And as I said, the point being is that you might accidentally act on that, which you don't want to do, because then you'll screw something up, or you might hurt someone, or whatever it happens to be, right? Now, thoughts, of course, depending on your kind of level of maybe intelligence and spiritual intelligence, you can tell if someone's thinking something bad about you, or you can kind of just intuit and understand what someone might be thinking in a vague sense, whether it's about you or someone else. This is emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence, etc. Understanding body language, understanding facial cues, or even just feeling it. It's an energy thing. We're feeling it. So people have the idea that their emotions or their thoughts are private, but that's not true. It's just invisible. Just because it's like if you fart, you might think, oh, well, no one can hear this, see this, smell this, or whatever, because it's invisible. But no, people still can hear it and smell it. Sound isn't really a tangible object, so to speak, but people can sense it, or can hear it. Other people's emotions and thoughts are not a tangible physical object, but you can, you get the feeling. It's like, oh, why do I feel weird around this person? Why do I feel like pressure or anxiety or nervous or whatever? It's like, why am I getting these weird thoughts about doing a certain thing while I'm around this person? It's because you're intuiting it, right? So again, you need to learn to control your thoughts and emotions. And I think that's just being a responsible adult. A child does not know how to control their thoughts and emotions. It does not know how to control their body. Some children pretty much piss themselves. If you don't control your emotions and thoughts, you are essentially a child pissing yourself emotionally and mentally. It's not a good look, so to speak. So, if you're dealing with people, it's kind of like you don't insult people. You don't mentally insult people either. Of course, this doesn't mean that you restrict and restrain yourself, and if someone's bad, that you just be like, oh, no, I'm just going to brush that off. I'm just going to pretend they're good. No, if they're bad, then say they're bad. If they're good, then say they're good. Be realistic. But it means, if you have a habit of like insulting people or thinking bad things about people, you need to nip that in the bud. Or if you have a habit of like always thinking the worst, oh, everything's going to break and fall and just, blah, blah, blah. Maybe it will. Maybe you've actually had really bad experiences and that's what's happened. I'm not going to oppose that. It could be the reality that bad things just happening. But the point being is, and I'm not telling you to have a super positive outlook. Be realistic. If you have negative thoughts about people, don't instantly just change them to positive thoughts. Oh no, this person's so good, so nice, whatever. Some people do that to ignore people's issues or to kind of feel safer around bad people, try to comfort them and control their emotions or whatever, so they don't like lash out against them. It's not a good thing to do. Just be realistic. Again, see things as they are, but also see your own thoughts and emotions as they are. Are you unneedingly being anxious? Are you unneedingly casting doubt on something? Control it. Learn to control it. You control the heart, the emotions, by controlling the organs related to it. The heart area can relate a lot to emotions and connection and such. The more lower belly and bladder, it's more deeper emotions. And the head is to control thought. The back of the head is like memories. If you constantly get like flashes of bad memories, you can focus on the back of the head and control that. That's one thing you can do. So anyway, yeah, really just, again, the same way that you don't just like stumble around and you know, I don't know, pull weird faces and just like lash out and hit people or something. You learn to control your body, right? You learn to control your voice. You don't speak improperly, or you try to be clear. You try to you speak well, and just you don't constantly insult or whatever. The same way, you got to control your emotions and your mind, and because they actually have an effect on reality. It's not like unless you're like super powerful, you're not really going to just be thinking about like levitating objects and it'll happen. But you will, maybe if you get really powerful, you could do that. But the point being is like you might think bad about someone, and that's going to affect them, and they're going to then feel uncomfortable around you, or whatever. So it's just like, just be careful, I guess, or just be careful with things. Anyway, that's about enough. To do things, usually you need materials, and to do things with those materials, usually you need energy. Energy is like the power that fuels. Let's just look at the Industrial Revolution, maybe. We have power sources that fuel these machines which spin, which then maybe the machine moves the sewing machine a needle, right? And you sew up clothing. Maybe it moves the hammer, or maybe it heats something up to forge metal, right? So it transforms, so to speak. The machine, which is powered by energy, transforms the material, right? And that's in a large scale. In your own life, in a smaller scale, you'll have ideas of things you want to do. Maybe you want to 3D print something. The obvious material would be either a filament or a resin. And you need the machine. So I guess the machine is almost the intermediary between the matter and the energy. The machine would be the 3D printer, and the energy in this case would be raw electricity. See, they don't run off gas, or they don't run off gasoline, or they don't run off coal or wood or something else like that. They run off electricity. So in that case, the electricity is the spiritual, the higher, the energetic force. The material, being the filament, the strands of plastic string, is the lower physical thing. And then the machine is kind of in the middle, because it is transmuter, maybe, the thing which binds them, right? Basically, the thing which takes movement or some kind of physical thing like heating up, or, I don't know, controlling elements like water. Like a coffee machine makes you coffee. It takes water and coffee beans, and then it, as a material, and then it takes electricity. And you could almost say the electricity, in a way, is a resource. Same way that the water is a resource. It's just that the electricity doesn't exactly go into the end product. Assuming you're not generating some kind of electrostatic or magnetic field that fundamentally changes the materials and then actually does go into the final product, or you start zapping something. I guess in that case it would, but in the case of the coffee machine, it doesn't. It just grinds the beans and runs water in high pressure amounts through the ground, and produces a kind of liquid, right? Now, you can be conservative with your resources. See, water is the bulker, water is the way to add space to something, add volume to something, right? If you mix water with things which are water soluble, usually they puff up and get bigger and larger and swell and such. Air is also another one of those. If you look at bread, when you cook bread, and the bread is made in a certain way, or when you ferment the bread, it will puff up, right? It'll be full of air, and this air is like a bulking agent almost. The same way, if you mix water and wheat,
it will bulk up, meaning you will have a larger volume or a larger space or area, a larger piece of dough than you would have a handful of powdered flour. So water, of course, with plants will cause the plants to kind of swell up and become larger and such. Well, if you have a very dry plant, it's very, it's very hard. Plants which are dry are very hard. They're not very nice to eat. It can be good sometimes for like roots, like medicinal roots, because it's got a lot of nutrients and salt in a condensed area. The best thing I can describe it or relate it to is maybe like dried fruit or dried meats or something, or even dried roots. That's like a plant without much water to bulk it up. It's got that very, defined, wrinkly. Some people look like that, and I guess you could think they're very dehydrated. They're very earthly people, while people who are kind of fat and plump, voluptuous, squishy, chubby, and such are very watery. Yes, you can squish them, and you can, I guess, like bread, like dough. You can knead them like dough. So if you were to cook food, you can cook a lot of food by bulking it up. That's like an old wives' trick. You only buy maybe a pound or 2 pounds, which is a kilogram of meat, but you are able to turn it into multiple kilograms of food because you add a bunch of beans, maybe you add a bunch of pasta or rice or grains like wheat grains or barley or something. You add a bunch of vegetables, and at the end of the day you end up with a stew or soup or something which is a lot larger than what you had with just the meat. Of course, the meat is where the nutrition mostly is, but you also need something to kind of fill you up. If you fill yourself up with meat, you might feel a bit sick, a bit too nutritious, a bit too rich. So in anything, you can use maybe lower quality ingredients or certain techniques and tricks, especially if you're building something, for example. Maybe you use, for example, if you buy hardwood, it's more expensive than buying like a softer wood. Houses are made out of pretty, admittedly, kind of shoddy wood. Hopefully, as long as they don't reach the elements, they should be okay. But pretty airy wood, so to speak, where it's not very dense, and you can see that hardwood is more dense, and assumably there's more compression, there's more maybe nutrition. It probably took longer for that hardwood to grow, while the softer wood, it probably didn't take as much time for it to grow. And instead, they make up the difference by adding a lot more chemicals to preserve the wood. They treat it with a lot more chemicals, right? So you can use ingredients which are of maybe lesser quality or of lesser weight, lesser density, but then you can do certain processes to make them usable still, to make them maybe not quite as good as the really, the expensive, denser stuff, but still pretty good in a way. Sometimes the stuff that is dense is actually cheap. Lead, which is very dense and heavy, is going to be more expensive. Is going to be cheaper than gold, which is still reasonably dense, reasonably heavy. A golden ring could buy you a lot of lead. Probably a shoe closet, well, maybe half a shoe closet full of lead bars, who knows. Strange side note, but you can buy I think a ton of galena lead ore for like 300 American dollars from Africa or some other place on Alibaba. Of course, it would probably cost you thousands of dollars in transportation, but I mean, I kind of want it, Depending on the purity of the ring, of course. So, not all things are equal, of course. The body will use energy and materials to build itself and heal itself, and sometimes the body can be a little bit greedy and want a lot of materials to heal and build itself, especially if you exercise a lot. or that you're doing a lot of stuff, or you've kind of hit a new level and the body's just wants to, really do a lot of things. Or after maybe like around if after you when you're sick, you need a lot of nutrients to regenerate yourself. But when you are actually sick, you don't want to have almost too many. You want to be kind of careful. The body rejects too much nutrition, too much energy when it's sick. It just kind of wants to purge. So, in that way. But anyway, really, I guess just think about it in your own life is in the conservation of resources and how do you get the most bang for your buck? How do you do the most? How do you put up the largest frame and structure and fill it in properly with the least amount of stuff, but also do it properly? Because again, the more, usually the better quality of something, the better it will be, but it will cost you more. You can do things cheaper. You can build an entire house for, let's say, a certain amount, which is cheap, and then you can build a house, the same house, but with better materials for triple the price, and it's the same size house, right? But it's just better materials. And it's probably going to last longer and be easier to maintain, but ultimately it costs you 3 times more. So we don't always have the luxury of being wealthy, which means you need to buy things in bulk. You need to bulk things up. You need to be conservative and such. And sometimes you do have to build the cheaper house out of cheaper materials, and then you have to make up for that. See, you're what would you say, splitting the difference or something? Instead, because you didn't pay as much to get better materials, you are then paying for it with your labor and work to maintain it later on, if you get what I'm saying. As in, it'll cost you the same in the end, so to speak. And sometimes the way that you pay is through your intelligence. See, if you think about things enough and you come up with a really nice strategy, then that is how you're paying. Some people make money from their intelligence. They think up, just say, well, maybe if you were like looking at the crypto market or the stock market or whatever, and you really investigate these things, you figure, okay, this one's going to rise. I'm going to invest in it. You've made money from your intelligence. So in this case, the thing, instead of your work, instead of your physical labor, because you can also use physical labor. Maybe when you're building the house, you build it physically in such a way that it's like a log house. You bang it together so strongly that it's never coming apart. That nothing's ever gonna. You could drive a car into the wall and it'd be fine, right? Like it's that strong because you've just built it so strong with your body, your strong body. Or you've used good techniques. You've used like fine wood joinery. And the wood joinery is, so lovely that even in 100 years, you can take the house apart and put it back together and it'll still work. You'll still have to maybe revarnish some things, resand some things, fill some things in. But ultimately, as long as it was maintained and kept, out of too many elements, the rain as such, that it tamed itself, right? So just think about that as in, the way you manipulate resources and energy with your intelligence, your skill, and your strength, your body, your mind, your hands, essentially, dictates things. And that's a resource in itself. That's an energy in itself. And all these things, create a result. They are the ingredients which go into the pot, which then make the magic brew of whatever result you want in life. And sometimes you might think, well, I don't have enough material or I don't have enough energy. Make the difference up with more legwork, with more intelligence, with more skill, with maybe other people. Get them to help you if you can. Or who knows, go find more materials, go refine more materials themselves and build it yourself out of things you can find in your backyard or local space. Anyway, that's about it for this one. Of course, check the links in the description and have a nice day.